Welcome. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Wharton Moneyball, the place where sports, statistics, and sometimes even a little bit of business collide. This is Eric Bradlow, professor of marketing, statistics, and data science at the Wharton School. I'm here joined by my colleague, my longtime friend and collaborator, Shane Jensen, professor of statistics and data science here at the Wharton School. Some combination of us, Cade Massey and Adi Wyner, are here every week on Wharton Moneyball. Well, Shane, this is one of those great moments, I'll say for myself in my life, but I know it's also true for our Wharton Moneyball listeners. If we think about where really the term even Wharton Moneyball started, or Moneyball started, it was through the analytics of baseball. And it really was. I mean, it was the work with Billy Beane, the Oakland A's. Obviously, it got popularized with a large movie that was done. It kind of brought it to the forefront. And you and I have talked about this many times. One of the greatest moments of the fact that we get to host this show is we get to talk to people that are living the world of sports. And I think every one of our listeners on Wharton Moneyball knows how much the Baseball Hall of Fame has meant and does continue to mean to my family and myself. I always say if anybody wants to give their loved one a birthday present that ends in a 5 or a 0, 25, 30, 35, 40. In my case, my family waited till I was 50 to have a membership to the Baseball Hall of Fame. But Shane, I can't tell you how thrilled and honored I am to introduce Josh Rawitch. As everyone knows that's listened to our show, Josh is the president of the National Baseball Hall of Fame. I didn't actually know before seeing a little bit of the rundown. Maybe we can even ask Josh to start there. He's a former senior executive with the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Los Angeles Dodgers. So Josh, first, on behalf of myself, my colleague Shane Jensen, welcome to Wharton Moneyball.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on here, and certainly appreciate your passion for the game. I could tell this is going to be a fun podcast.
Well, it will be. And for those people, people will be watching the video. I'm actually wearing by the way, I think I have 10 pieces now of swag from the National Baseball Hall of Fame. As I took a picture to Josh the other day, I teach my MBA students in this gear. And actually one of my students, Josh, you'll find this funny, said, I thought when you wrote member, I thought you were in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Like, no, I can only dream. I said, but why don't we start with the following? Could you tell people a little bit about your background in baseball, like the work that you did with the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers and how all of that started?
Yeah, well, I was very fortunate. I went to Indiana University, so fortunate enough in that, the football school that everybody knows and loves. But my freshman year, a professor just said, hey, send your resume to your hometown team. You never know what would happen. And the reality is I didn't even have a resume at that point. The world was different in 1995, and you couldn't just send off a resume to the Dodgers and land an internship. But I did that with a little bit of just resourcefulness, calling around and trying to land an interview, and I was able to get that. And it really took about 10 days of working, if even that long, before I went, oh man, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. Like I thought I wanted to be a broadcaster, and I wound up realizing, wow, there's a whole front office of things to do, whether it's on the baseball side, the business side. And so I was fortunate to basically be at the Dodgers from as an intern for 3 consecutive summers, and then started full-time with them back in 1998, more in the marketing and advertising area. I moved over to public relations in 2000, and then actually left for a couple of years when MLB Advanced Media was being built out. I got a chance to help build the MLB.com sites as you now know them, and then came back to the communications world where I stayed all the way through some chaotic times of the Dodgers. And I was very fortunate. I learned a ton in those early years as things were a little crazy during the Dodgers' non-winning years. But right around 2011, the Diamondbacks, Derek Hall, who was a very significant baseball executive and president of the Diamondbacks, convinced me to move to Arizona, where he kind of taught me how to run an organization over a decade from 2011 to 21. And that's when the Hall of Fame came calling. So I'm guessing some of the other Dodger and Diamondback stuff may come up as we're talking, but that's the quick version of how I ended up here in Cooperstown.
So just tell me, how does that conversation go? How do you go from a senior executive in baseball to the president of the National Baseball Hall of Fame? Did you know Jane Forbes Clark, who, for those people that don't know, people know the Forbes family in baseball. I believe Jane Forbes Clark is the granddaughter, if I've got this right, of one of the original pioneers of baseball. And I see her, of course, just like I see you every year in Cooperstown. Had you met her? Was she chairperson of the board back then? And did she contact you?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So her grandfather, Jane Forbes Clark, it's actually Forbes is, I think, her mother's maiden name, and Clark is actually her grandfather's name. He was the one who created the Baseball Hall of Fame along with Ford Frick. So she has been chairman for over a quarter century. She's been involved in the Hall of Fame since the day she was born. It's been in her family since it started. Um, and when the previous president, a gentleman by the name of Jeff Idelson, was leaving, I guess he was retiring, and he gave them a list of people that he thought might be good at doing this job. And for the students maybe in the Wharton School who are watching this, I mean, I could tell you, like I often think about a random golf tournament I played in the Dominican Republic where I wound up in a foursome with Jeff, and I don't think without that he ever thinks, hey, this guy could have my job someday. But you spend 18 holes talking to somebody and getting to know them, and over time, I got to know Jeff. And so I remember he called me one day. I was pulling into the parking lot in spring training, probably February 24th. I don't know what date it was, but and he said, "Hey, would you ever think about my job? There's a few of you guys we've identified who we want to interview for this." And I was very close to saying thank you, but I am not moving to Cooperstown, New York. I'm good. And something told me, hey, let's wait and talk to my wife about it. And when I did, she said, "How would you ever turn down that opportunity if you got that?" And so we went through the process, and here we are, 5 years later, living with our family in this amazing baseball mecca.
Let me just say one more thing before I ask. Yeah, I'll turn things back over to Cade to kind of lead us in these conversation topics. There's a lot of interesting things going on at the Hall of Fame. Um, what do you see your role as? Like, what do you do as the president of the Baseball Hall of Fame? And let me just say again to our listeners out there, if you've, and I grew up, as all of our listeners, I grew up in Manhattan in New York City. I didn't grow up in a small town, but if you've never been to Cooperstown, New York, you must go. Like, the thing that surprised my mother, because again, I took my mother there when she was 91 years old. You literally just walk up to the Baseball Hall of Fame. Like, you're walking down Main Street in Cooperstown and you hit the end of the street and there it is on the right-hand side. Like, it's just, you expect it to be like, oh, there's like I don't know, a 20,000 seat parking lot right there. And I mean, no, you just walk right up and you walk right in. So
Yeah.
can you tell us, what do you do in your job? Like, what do you see as the main responsibilities of it?
Well, first and foremost, we're a nonprofit. So we are an independent. A lot of people think we're owned and operated by MLB, but we're not. So of course, fundraising and a mission-driven approach to things is part of my job. And so we're all about preserving history. That's that 40,000 artifacts and 3 million documents, all these incredible things in our collection. We honor excellence, and that's kind of the administration of the Hall of Fame. So that's the thing most people are probably familiar with, the debates over who belongs in and who and when and how do they get elected. All of that is part of the job. And then connecting generations, which is really something I think we do. You just talked about it. I mean, we do it better than any place on the planet. And you watch it happen. I just came from the conference room before we jumped on here, and you walk past a grandparent and a parent and a kid, and they're having this incredible conversation. And so that's really what our mission is. And I'd say in a lot of ways, my role is not all that different than a CEO or president of any institution. I mean, ultimately, we've got about 100 full-time people. Our leadership team is 6 different department heads. And so ultimately, myself and that group sets the vision. We try to make sure that people have what they need. And then we try to hire really good people to go out and do their jobs and make this place what you're talking about, this incredibly special spot on the planet. So, um, again, I'm sure I'll drop in some other things that I get to do over the course of a year, but that's really, I mean, it's the chief executive role of any institution. You're responsible for the good, the bad, the ugly, I guess.
Let me turn things over to Cade, who's going to then, I think, lead our discussion through a few topics. And of course, we will get, of course, got a bunch of questions about analytics in the Hall of Fame, but I know there's so much going on given the 250th anniversary of America. And, the old expression, there's nothing more American than baseball. So obviously, you guys have a role. But let me turn things over to Cade.
Well, I'm curious to hear you talk about knowing something about it and then hearing you talk about it, but also realizing how much the game is evolving some. And it feels like in baseball more than any other sport, there's this constant tension between honoring the past and innovating. And frankly, I think most people celebrate some of the recent innovations that have been helpful in keeping the game kind of buoyant in people's eyes and the fans and new fans. So I'm curious. I mean, you sit in this place where you're preserving the past, but you're also honoring excellence and you're also connecting generations. So it has some of this same tension. But how do you, as sitting on top of that, which is kind of the citadel to the history of baseball. How do you experience that tension, and where are you navigating that tension between innovating and staying in touch and staying contemporary, and yet also connecting to the past?
Well, I mean, the reality is you just hit on, I think, the single biggest challenge we have. And I think our staff all the time tells me, like they hear me say all the time, our job is to keep this place relevant for the next generation of fans. I know that you guys would love this place. I know that our parents would love it. Our grandparents would love it. It's how do we get my now 18-year-old and 15-year-old to love it? And how do we get the 12-year-olds who come out here en masse for baseball tournaments to love it? And how do we get people to essentially, from the moment that they give a thought, they hear about Cooperstown in a broadcast, somebody mentions, oh, this person's Cooperstown bound, or oh, this person is in Cooperstown. How do you get them from that moment of thinking about going all the way through the planning process, the coming to Cooperstown, the experience being top notch, to becoming a member, as Eric said? You don't have to wait till your 0 or your 5 birthday. You can do it for any birthday. And then frankly, how once they've been here, because for many people it's a once in a lifetime thing, once they've come, how do you get them to stay engaged as a member and as a donor, and then eventually believe it or not, put us in your will, which a lot of people do. It's like, how do you literally go from the beginning of life till the end of life as a lover of the Hall of Fame? And I think the way that we're doing that now, to really answer your question, because I got off it a little bit, it's thinking about how do people experience the Hall of Fame. It used to be just through. I mean, when you walked in here in 1939, it was a small one-room museum with some artifacts and some labels. And over time, we've evolved the exhibits to be more thematic and less timeline-based. And then eventually, now, I mean, the one that we just opened, which was last summer, called Yaku Baseball, the Trans-Pacific Exchange of the Game. It's probably the most interactive and engaging thing we've ever done. It's less artifacts. It's more touch screens and video games and things that you can do. And we've been doing that for a lot of years, but continuing to figure out the genesis of how you use your phone as you walk through it, but don't ruin the experience because you've got your head buried in the phone. And how do you use AI, but don't ruin it by going so far AI that nobody knows if this is real or fake? It's all those things. It is a crazy balance that we all have to think about, and it's probably the biggest challenge that we'll have from now till whenever I'm done doing this job.
Shane, let me hold you off for 1 second. Let me ask one follow-up, then we're going to go to Shane. My one follow-up is, okay, what organizational processes do you follow to try to hit that balance right? Like, how do you pull in good innovation and keep out bad innovation? How do you strike that right balance? How do you experiment enough and not too much? Organizationally, as a leader, what are you doing?
Well, I mean, I think early on, I remember saying to the group, like, we can't be afraid to fail. That was something that I learned a lot of the Diamondbacks. You have to be willing to innovate, and sometimes the innovation is not going to work. And so, to give you an example, in the exhibit I was just talking about, we created a kind of pretty cool interactive that was like creating a stamp. It's not going to sound very cool, but when you walk in, it's a very obvious. You create a stamp in the baseball exhibit, the Yaku baseball exhibit, and it just hasn't worked exactly the way we wanted. So we're thinking about, okay, what can we do to try to make it a little bit more engaging? So the first thing is you can't be afraid to fail. And I think if you set people down a course of, you know what, think big, start small, scale fast. That's actually what our IT guy at the Diamondbacks used to say: think big, start small, scale fast. We I don't think we ever want to be here on the forefront of technology. We're just not. We don't have the money to screw up that big. We don't want to be so far out front that we're doing 3D televisions and now all of a sudden we got to replace the whole place because we went wrong. So we look at what works at other places. We think about how it might work here. We encourage creativity, and we just have real honest conversations about what might work and what might not. But it's hard because there isn't a perfect answer to your question, like what system works.
One last follow-up. Give us one institution that you consider a peer institution that you learned from, maybe one that might surprise us.
Well, there's a bunch. I mean, there's 5 or 6 of us who have my job at different halls of fame that we have quarterly calls and we just kind of chat with each other. But I just was, I mentioned my Hoosier fandom. I was down at the Peach Bowl when Indiana was in the semifinal, and I went to the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, and they are doing incredible stuff with AI right now. Just absolutely mind-blowing, cool technology that throws. I was with my son and my cousin, so I guess 15-year-old, a almost 50-year-old, and an almost 60-year-old. And everybody was around us was just having an absolute blast. Now it's very different than we're much more about preserving artifacts. I think we're probably more, I don't know if this is fair to say, but more of a museum, whereas they're more of an entertainment venue. But
Yep.
we came back and immediately were like, let's have some conversations about some of the stuff they're doing. And
Okay.
as we build out this new experiential gallery, can we take some of the ideas from that? But I don't think there's a place I've gone yet since I've been here where I haven't stolen an idea or two
Mhm.
and come back and said, hey, what do we think about? And everybody does that. It's not just me.
Mhm.
The whole place always has our eyes open to what's out there.
Mhm. Shane.
Yeah, I guess feeding off that pure institution idea, I think maybe the second most my second favorite museum to visit, other than the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, is the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame in Tokyo. Absolutely incredible institution as well. And maybe you already talked about you talked about a little bit the baseball as the trans-Pacific game, but how much that you've kind of are talking to like kind of I mean, places like like exchange programs with places like the National Ball of Fame in Tokyo. I mean, that's probably the one I know, but in Korea, I mean, obviously with the World Baseball Classic coming up, we're sort of seeing that baseball is becoming even more of an international sport than it used to be. And obviously it's throughout our major leagues now. So how much of like at the Hall of Fame level are you connecting with some of these other kind of pure institutions or whatever kind of constitutes Baseball Hall of Fame in different countries?
Well, it's funny. The Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame, we are very close with them. Me and my counterparts, several of us with their counterparts. We went out there a couple times over the last few years. Last year, because we had this huge opportunity with Ichiro being the first Japanese player inducted last year, and this brand new exhibit we created, we actually launched the whole announcement of this initiative with the U.S. ambassador in his residence in Tokyo, and then we had my counterpart from the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame standing there with me. He was holding, I think, a Mickey Mantle jersey, and I had a Sadaharu O bat or something kind of. I mean, there's all sorts of cool ways to. Now they are different in some ways. They are right in the Tokyo Dome, as you know, so it's much easier to get to, and that's one of our unique challenges is that you can't just accidentally happen upon the Hall of Fame. But that's one of the great things about us as well. But what's funny is how much they have. They actually are older than people realize in Japan. They opened that Hall of Fame about 20, 30 years after we did. So they've been around for 50 or 60 years. And
you can see all about Babe Ruth over there and everything like that. I learned a lot about American baseball at the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. And in fact, I was at the World Baseball Classic before I had this job when I was in the Dodgers and Diamondbacks. The first 3 WBCs I was involved in as a venue press chief. So I ran the venue at Dodger Stadium, where I think the best event I ever went to was Japan versus Korea in 2009 championship, which was just an unbelievable international experience. And then in 2017, I ran venue media operations in Seoul, Korea. And I met a bunch of people there who have not that long ago reached out about what if we wanted to create something similar in Korea. So we do all talk to each other. It's clear baseball is just something different here than it is in most countries around the world. But Japan, the Dominican Republic actually just had their Hall of Fame ceremony about 10 days ago for the Latin Baseball Hall of Fame. So we're in touch with all these places. We try to share ideas with one another because we're not competing. It's not like we're the Braves and the Reds and we don't want to tell you what we're doing. We're all friends and we all try to borrow and steal ideas from one another.
So I'm going to transition back to Eric, but on the way, I'll ask one question that I know that we're interested in at some point, so might as well jump into it sooner rather than later. What's the role for analytics in the future of the Hall of Fame? And in particular, could you imagine ever making space for someone like Bill James, who created sabermetrics, and there's no sport out there that's been, I think, more affected by analytics than baseball. And Bill, I think anybody would give him credit as the prime innovator. So is there an avenue? We raised this question having just had a conversation in the last week or two about whether Dean Oliver could ever be in the Basketball Hall of Fame. And so baseball has an argument more than any other sport for analytics. Curious, is there such an avenue in the future for Bill or people like Bill?
So, I mean, the answer is at the moment, our executive, we have number of different ways that you can get in the Hall of Fame, but the only way that executives, umpires, and managers can be elected is through our era committee process, which happens every 3 years. We look at that category. This coming December is one of those years. Up to this point, the Historic Overview Committee that puts together the ballot has mostly looked at executives as owners or general managers, what they describe as team builders. So somebody like Walter O'Malley, who not only won a number of World Series championships in Los Angeles, but responsible for moving baseball west. He also won one in Brooklyn, I should say. But or a general manager, John Sherholz or Pat Gillick, somebody who was building that team. Up to this point, the only executive that doesn't neatly fit into that category is Marvin Miller, who was elected several years ago as the head of the Players Association, and that was a little bit outside the box. So I would never say never. I mean, Bill does not neatly fall into one of those categories, but I think part of what I think makes this place so special is that it's not just a plaque gallery. There's so many people who come here and they think that they're going to walk into just all it is what you see on TV, the plaque gallery. And the reality is it's a 3-story museum. And so Bill James has a file in our library, and all of his books are there to be studied by generations who 100 years from now, you're going to be able to walk into Baseball Hall of Fame and say, can you pull me out everything you have on Bill James? And it is going to be, frankly, possibly more than everything that you have on
Bill Mazeroski, who just
thank you. Could be that. Unfortunately, I use a name and we just lost. And so I mean, I think that's the reality is that we don't see ourselves as just a plaque gallery and a Hall of Fame. We are the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. And so right now, is there a path that would make great sense for Bill? Not necessarily, but I wouldn't say that's out of the realm. And as you can probably know from people's complaints or liking of what we do, we've changed the era committee process quite a bit over the years as we think it when we think it needs to be adjusted. And so if we ever go down that route, it would certainly open up to a lot more executives if you started going down the road of non-team builders. You wind up with scouts, and you could wind up with business side who innovated the promotional item. You could wind up really starting to go down a lot of paths. And to this point, our board hasn't really been looking to do that, but I'd never say never to any idea.
Before I start throwing a bunch more questions, I know Shane wanted to jump in here for a second. Please, Shane.
Well, maybe one of these is going to be one of your questions because it kind of does touch on more the analytics side, or at least I think one of the consequences of analytics in baseball. And is the kind of I wanted to kind of ask what your take is sort of on. Obviously, we're seeing over the last 20 years a real change in the usage of starting pitchers specifically. And that change in the usage of starting pitcher is going to have downstream consequences, I think, to Hall of Fame cases in the future. Kind of a lot of the, I guess, traditional barometers like wins and stuff like that are going to, for lack of a better term, become kind of less relevant or more obsolete as kind of measures of pitching quality. So, obviously this is a ways away because we, at least the current generation of pitchers still has wins. But have you guys thought about what you were seeing in baseball with starting pitcher usage over the last few years, and what does starting a Hall of Fame pitcher look like 10 years from now, basically, and how we still choose pitchers.
So, it's a great question. It's certainly one that I think a lot of people have been writing about recently because Felix Hernandez just recently made a huge jump on the ballot. I think the largest jump we've ever seen from one year to the next. And he doesn't necessarily have the counting totals that some of the others do. But realistically, the guys who were elected in the 60s didn't have the same numbers as the guys that were elected in the 30s and 40s. Cy Young. And nobody's going to win 500 games again. And so the answer is it always shifts over time. Obviously, closers didn't start getting elected until a certain point in time, and then suddenly now you see 7 or 8 guys who predominantly relievers in the Hall. I don't know what it's going to look like, and frankly, it's not up for us. And this is going to sound like a total cop out, but that's one of the things that I think was really smart when the Hall of Fame both was started and has continued is that we don't get a say. We really don't have anything to do with who gets in. We honor those who get elected by either the baseball writers, which is 420 or so writers, 75% of them vote for someone. And so it's really up to them to sort that out, to try to figure out, okay, what is the right amount of wins? Or is it go to whip, or does it go to strikeouts.
Yeah, and I guess I realize you're not really kind of running that selection process. I'm just kind
Yeah.
of predicting what that selection process will look like. Like with the
Yeah.
plaques 15 years from now, will it be like strikeouts per 9 or something like that? Like how will we honor those, like this next generation of pitchers
I
where
think
it's
what
like going to be like
Shane's
150 wins or something?
what
Yeah.
Shane's worried about is that I'm going to be coming to Cooperstown when I'm 70 years old, and I'm going to be there by myself because no one's going to meet the traditional criterion and
Oh, I'll
whatnot.
be there with you. I'll be there with. No, that's not what I'm worried about.
Yeah, no, I mean,
But
I do think on the plaques, we just saw for the first time with Todd Helton, we used OPS on a plaque. I'm sure at one point it
Yeah.
was strange to
Nice.
use, I don't know, pick a stat rate, stolen base percentage. But at some point, they didn't think about how often you got
Even
caught.
on base percentage, we weren't
Yeah,
thinking
exactly.
about like 40 years
all
ago.
those things
Yeah.
have evolved, and that's part of what this place has been really good at for now almost 90 years, is evolving with it. Maybe we're a little slower. Like I said, we don't want to necessarily be on the forefront. You're probably not going to see me it's not my decision, but you're not going to see us put WAR on a plaque tomorrow morning. But maybe 10 years from now, they do. And maybe 20 years from now, it's on all the plaques, because that's how things, or maybe it's not. I mean, the reality is the way you look at history. I mean, Felix was an interesting one. Someone said to me when I was in spring training last week that, well, if Felix is a Hall of Famer, then so and so also should be. And the reality is you're not. Everybody has their own case. I realize that people look and they say, well, if this, then that. But the reality is everybody's different. Everybody pitched in a different era. People played in different ballparks, and all the things that I don't think you can't really play that game, because you'd wind up with way more Hall of Famers. And I know that one thing we do believe in here is that it should be exclusive. We do not want to be the sort of Hall of Fame where 10 to 15 people are getting in every year. We don't look at it and say, who are the 4 best that aren't in? Let's elect them. We look at it and say, here are the candidates. And if 75% of you agree that they're a Hall of Famer, they're a Hall of Famer. And unfortunately, sometimes we've had 73% or 68%, and you just don't get there. That doesn't mean you weren't an unbelievable player in the history of the game. Doesn't mean you're not represented in other places of the building too. It just means at the moment you don't have a plaque in the gallery, and maybe the next time we look at it, you might.
So let me just ask a few questions about things. I want to get back to analytics in a second, but I want to ask about a few of the initiatives going on this year at the Hall of Fame. So could you tell us what the America 250 initiatives are and how the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum? By the way, I'm going to correct myself. I've always called it the National Baseball Hall of Fame, but you've pointed out an important thing. That's not actually its name. It's the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. And the museum part is an important part of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and it's been on the front of the building since the very beginning. So it was actually when I interviewed for this job, I remember somebody saying to me, don't forget, there's also the other half of it. It is, in fact, and museum, and you better understand all that, or half the building there is not going to be very pleased with you. Because it's almost half the people who are museum studies majors or have master's degrees in various areas of collecting or preserving or archives or curators, librarians. There's a large number of people whose job it is nothing to do with the actual Hall of Fame itself. So,
yeah. So can you tell us about the America
Yeah.
250 and what's the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum? What's their part in this America 250?
well, I think it's going to be such a national celebration that we hear about all year long that it was pretty easy for us to look and say, okay, when you talk about a sport that grew up with the country, I mean, that is it. People were basically playing baseball when they were creating this place, meaning this nation. And so we looked at a number of different ways we wanted to celebrate it. One of them is, in fact, a trail through the museum, the America 250 Trail, that's going to basically take 13 artifacts for the 13 colonies and tie them back to the ideals in the Declaration of Independence. So unity or liberty or perseverance. And so it'll kind of give somebody an opportunity to walk through the museum and see things that relate back all the way to 1776. We also fast forward about 80 years or so, and in 1857, the oldest known written rules of baseball were created when the New York Knickerbockers got together in 1857. Those documents still exist and are being loaned to us for the next 5 years. And so we are creating a brand new exhibit that's both interactive, but also in a way, when you go and see the Constitution at one of the Smithsonian's, in like this incredible glass, you're looking at a document that's 180 years old. That's a new part of what we're creating. We are very fortunate. Rick Monday, but 50 years ago in April, Rick Monday was a center fielder for the Cubs, and two fans ran on the field, tried to burn the American flag, and Rick ran in front of them, stole the flag from them, and kind of kept running and saved it from being burned on the field. That flag has never left his family's possession, and he's loaning that to us this summer. And so for the first time ever, fans will be able to come to the Hall of Fame and see this flag on display and understand kind of the patriotism behind Rick's actions that day. And then ultimately all of that kicks off the same of Memorial Day weekend. And for those that have ever been, I'm sure you've probably been to one of our Memorial Day weekend games. For years, we've hosted a classic game here that's kind of the Legends game, recently retired players and Hall of Famers all on the field together. This year, we're making it all about our military. It's the Hall of Fame Military Classic, a tribute to service and sacrifice. And so we've got players who either, in some cases, serve themselves. We have two major league players who were actually active duty military before they got to the big leagues. We have 24 players who care deeply about the military. Either they had a parent who served, or a spouse who served, or they supported military charities when they played. And then a number of Hall of Famers who fall in that category as well. And they're all going to be playing at Doubleday Field and doing a really, really cool event that you're just not going to want to miss. We've got Wounded Warriors playing with them on the field. We've just got an incredible event put together for Memorial Day weekend that I really do think if people come, if there's an ounce of patriotism in your body, you will be blown away by the cool stuff going on.
Did you ever think, by the way, before I get into the class of 2026, I want to talk about briefly, because we've talked about it on the show. As a matter of fact, what is it? The whole, there's that Hall of Fame ballot tracker, which I know you must be aware of, that, the publicity of the ballots.
Sure.
Did you ever consider this year of all years to change induction weekend to July 4th? Or was that never actually discussed? Like, what would be more American for the Bradlow family to be in Cooperstown on July 4th?
That's funny. We didn't think about that. Interestingly, we do 2 years from now. We did move the induction weekend to August so that it wouldn't be up against the Olympics, but we had not thought about moving it up. And I think, I don't know why we didn't, to be honest with you. Maybe that would have been a good idea, but there's also going to be a lot of other stuff going on July 4th weekend. So we probably shouldn't compete against all that stuff. We kind of own the end of July in the world of baseball. And I like the way that works.
So let's talk about the 2026 class, because it's an interesting class for a lot of reasons. First of all, we have a 3,000 hit player, Carlos Beltran. That's not that common. People don't, 3,000 doesn't happen all the time. We have Andrew Jones, who I forget if it's 10-time Golden Glove winner, but I think there's some stat like there's only 3 players in baseball history with 400 home runs, or center fielders with 400 home runs and 10 Golden Gloves. And it's like him, Willie Mays, and Ken Griffey.
Yeah.
Then we have the all-time leader of second baseman in home runs in Jeff Kent. How are you thinking about the 2026 class and kind of what's going to go on in induction weekend?
Well, there's a lot of different angles. You just cited a few of them, and what's kind of unique is that Jeff played with both Andrew and Carlos. So there's not only teammates there. Carlos and Andrew are actually very good friends, and they came out for their orientations together. And as two center fielders, it had been a while really since two center fielders. I think only when it came to Negro Leaguers did we have two center fielders inducted in the same class. So it's we also have Carlos played for a number of different teams. He's going to go in wearing a Mets hat, but ultimately, whether it's the Royals, the Astros, the Cardinals, a number of organizations that will support him. So I think we're going to have, on top of that, there is just massive pride in Puerto Rico from Carlos, and I think we're going to see a lot of both people from Puerto Rico coming up. I'll be going down there 10 days. I guess I'm going down there for the WBC and helping tell all the Puerto Ricans that you should come to Cooperstown. But also there's a huge Puerto Rican population down in the city that's going to come up. And then Jeff is obviously representing the San Francisco Giants, and Andrew's representing the Braves. Braves have always traveled really well. You see it. They've had a lot of Hall of Famers from that 1990s dynasty. So it's a great class. What's amazing is when they came here within the last month, we've had all of them here for an orientation, and you just watch the reverence that they hold this place. And even as Jeff Kent wasn't the baseball historian, he'd be the first to admit growing up, he just said, I'm like, he was in tears half the day. Like every time we turned around, he was crying, and he just couldn't believe what what he was doing and where he was. So it's
Well, it's
a
literally the
great
meaning of the
class.
term, before I turn it back over to Cade, it's literally the meaning of the term forever. Like, you're forever in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And,
Yeah.
they can't take it away from you. And I don't know if it's 1% or less than 1% of all players that make
Yeah.
it. I think there's 300 maybe players roughly that have
Correct.
made
Yeah,
the
it's
Hall of
just under that, and you're right. It's about the top 1%. And just before Kate jumps in, I'll say this: one of the other really cool things is that it's when you say forever. I said to Jeff Kent's wife, like she was getting emotional watching the intro film that we have, which is the best baseball movie on the planet. I mean,
I was just
people
going to
haven't.
say, by the way,
It's so good.
we should, that film, like, even though there's a 3-story museum, when I arrived there on, the Sunday of induction ceremony, we head straight to that film.
It's unbelievable.
For those people that haven't seen it, I don't know. I'm being serious for a second. I think everyone growing up in every school should watch that film. It's the most wonderful. I'm literally in tears
Yeah.
watching that. It's the greatest film that represents baseball. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you. Anyway, Dana Kent watched it, and she was in tears as she walked out. And she said, it's just hard for me to believe that Jeff is going to be here forever. And I said, the reality is, it's not just Jeff. It's your guys' kids, it's your grandkids, it's their grandkids. That 150 years from now, they're going to be able to come in and see great grandpa Jeff's plaque on the wall, and like, it's hard to fathom how cool that is, because it happens all the time. Where George Sisler's great grandkid showed up here last summer, and I put his great grandfather's glove in his hand. He'd never met the guy. He only knew that he was related to this Hall of Famer, and then you just watch like magic happen.
Josh, I'm curious, what happens at these orientations? Inductees have an orientation that's entertaining in some way. What happens? Why do you do this? What happens at these orientations?
Well, it's like college. We have to show them where the fraternities and sororities are and all that.
They get the lunch card. They get the lunch cards.
Exactly. How do you swipe for a meal? I mean, the reality is for many of them, they haven't been. In all 3 cases this year, they had been at various points for one reason or another. But quite often, they've either never been to Cooperstown, or they've only been here because they supported a teammate who was getting in, and they've only seen it during its chaotic times. So we give them a tour. One of the most important things we do is we give them a tour of the museum. We give them a tour of the archives. We if they ever donated an artifact, in most cases, if you're a Hall of Famer at that point, you probably donated something. You had some moment that we asked for your bat or your glove or your hat. And so we'll break that back out again and show it to them. And if it's not on display, we'll show them in the archives. And it gives them an idea of what it is that they're joining. And then we spend quite a bit of time walking them through what that weekend looks like, because it is controlled chaos. I mean, it is 96 hours of events and parties, and you've got everybody that's ever known you and loved you there, and they all want a piece of you. And it's like, here, we can help you figure out, how does this work? How can these people be at this party while these people are at this party? And where do they stay? And how do you rent homes? I mean, Cooperstown is a village of 1,600 people. And somehow every summer it swells by 10, 20, 30 times that. And so it's helping them figure out driving them over to where the actual induction happens, and letting them imagine what the stage looks like when we put it up there. And so there's a lot of things, and just getting to know our staff, because the reality is there's probably 5 of us or so, maybe a little more, that spend a lot of time with them, helping them get through this. And it's just to get to know you, have a couple meals, and make sure they feel at ease, help them work on their speech. Our vice president, John Chestakowski, is incredible at guiding people through. How do you not just stand up there and say thank you to this person? Thank you, thank you, thank you,
Yeah,
thank you.
right.
You read every name. It's how do you tell some stories about your career that can also. So it's all that sort of stuff that goes on in orientation, and it seems crazy that a Hall of Famer would need that, but many of them will remind us, like, I don't know how to give a speech. I was a ball player. This is not what I'm good at. And we say, don't worry, we'll help you through every
Josh,
facet.
maybe 2 quick questions before I turn it back over to Cade, who's going to wrap up. Is there any Hall of Famer you've met and even you're starstruck? I'm sure it happens all the time, but I'll give you an example. Since my mother grew up she was a Brooklyn Dodger fan growing up. Even today, every time I see Sandy Koufax, I'm like, I can't believe I'm seeing Sandy Koufax, whatever they called the arm of God or whatever his nickname. I cannot believe it. And, years ago, I saw Willie Mays at the ceremony at Hank Aaron. And I cannot believe I'm seeing 2 of in my view, of the greatest players Ted Williams. I just can't believe it. So is there anybody that just blows you away and you're like, I can't believe I'm seeing this person?
Well, it's hard. I mean, the reality is that, not to sound cheesy, but they all absolutely still have that impact on many of us. Like, it is crazy that we spend our time with these people. But Sandy is the one for me that I also grew up with, or grew up loving as a Dodger fan in Los Angeles, and as a Jewish American who just has always heard stories about him. I was kind of like, I mean, I had met him a couple times at the Dodgers, but the fact that I now consider him a friend, and I like to think he thinks the same, and that every once in a while when I pick up the phone and give him a call, or go grab breakfast when I'm in Florida, there's definitely the reality of like, this is kind of nuts that this is where life has taken me. But I think what's cool about the Hall of Fame is that it humbles every one of them. Like, it did when even if they had a reputation, maybe when they're playing of being
It humbles Reggie Jackson? Really?
humbles everybody. It's crazy.
Even
how it
Reggie
happens.
Jackson?
Man,
Even
if we
Reggie.
could bottle that.
Okay, hold on. No, I want to push on this because I know people. Whenever people get some kind of award and they say I'm humbled by this, how is it that you're humbled? So can you just elaborate a little bit by what you mean? Like, why? What do you mean by humbled there, and why? What exactly is going on?
Yeah, I think it's funny when you win some other award and you hear that. I agree with you. Sometimes you're like, how does that humble you? But the reality is, in this instance, you are standing on a stage in front of and alongside these, many cases, legends you grew up watching, and there is a humbling feeling to that they can't actually believe. Like, wow, I am standing here in front of Ken Griffey Jr. and I grew up emulating him, or Ozzie Smith, or whoever it is. Um, and I do think it's real. I don't think it's BS. I think they genuinely, like, there's something about, and the Sunday night dinner that we do, which is basically, I mean, it's just this insane. The wives and husbands split up. The Hall of Famers go into one dining room, and the only people in there are them, myself, and the commissioner of baseball. And they're back in their clubhouse again. They get to hang out and be, and so you see someone like Ichiro, who one of the greatest players of all time, is like a kid again, sitting there at a table with all the 3,000 hit guys, and there's the 500 home run table, and there's the pitchers table, and so it just it
Hold
is
on, Josh.
totally interesting.
They organize themselves by similar types.
They
A
do.
couple
It's
of guys
pretty
that have to be at very few that have to be at both those tables. Eddie Murray has to be at a couple tables, but yes,
exactly.
but either way.
And that's exactly right. There's only a couple of guys ever with 3,000 hits, 500 homers, and Eddie. Actually, it's today his birthday. I think today is Eddie's birthday. I'll tell you, it is in fact Eddie's birthday. Happy birthday, Eddie. It's odd that that's in my calendar. Like, you grow up watching Eddie Murray as an Oriole and a Dodger, and it's like, why is his birthday on my calendar? But I guess that's
Let me ask one last question before turning over to Cade. Do you have statisticians at the Baseball Hall of Fame? And I mean, like, for example, you mentioned that you emerged from the business side of things. Like, statisticians do a lot. Like, for example, I'm a quantitative marketing person. Like, do you have a statistician that helps you with customer lifetime value, about who to target with email campaigns? Like, forget whether that person's on the baseball side or the business side. Is there a role for a statistician within the Hall of Fame, and what do they do for you guys?
Yeah, so we actually 2 years ago hired our first business analytics person. She does a great job. She's actually sitting about 50 feet from me outside the door there. And she does exactly that. She focuses much more on customer satisfaction surveys, retail numbers, email campaign, all the sorts of things that businesses focus on. Prior to that, it was kind of everybody had little pieces of it, and we felt like we really needed to add somebody. And frankly, at some point, it's going to be more than one somebody. We're going to have a whole department of people doing it. But she does a great job of helping us make smarter decisions by looking at some of the data. On the baseball side or the Hall of Fame side, I mean, we have curators who are baseball savants, several of them, really, truly, deeply knowledgeable when it comes to statistics. Some of them better at different eras of the game, some of them different. I mean, there's all sorts of things that they're good at. And then we actually have several people who came up through more like the baseball PR world, myself included, who have been following baseball stats, are massive baseball fans. We might not fall into the category of Bill James or Theo Epstein, but we're kind of knowledgeable about what we do, and so we try to incorporate that into exhibits or business analytics, things of that nature.
Josh, it would be fun for us to have guys. It would be fun for us to have one of those curators sometime, one of these baseball savants. Whatever the niche might be, let's grab somebody and talk about that niche. It would be.
I'll tell you this:
it'd be great fun.
if you, however much you think you know about baseball, Tom Schieber's baseball knowledge will take it such far beyond. Every time I think, oh man, I'm a big baseball fan.
I'm ready for that because
Yeah,
I
bring it.
claim to have an
Pretty amazing.
knowledge.
There's several of them, but Tom is the one that just kind of blows my mind sometimes when he can recall
Okay.
things.
So Marissa D, Tom's last name again, Josh.
Tom Schieber.
Schieber. All right. We'll
He's
cut
one
out
of
you.
several. I don't want to say the others aren't just as good. He's just our senior curator.
Well, let me ask you one on the way out question. Again, top of mind. Don't overthink it. There's not a right answer to this question. Your favorite artifact in the museum, for whatever reason.
So I'll give my standard easy answer that there are so many, it is hard to pick. But the best way that the best one that I've tried to, because it is top of mind, is that when I grew up in Los Angeles as a Dodger fan. They won the World Series when I was 12, which is like exactly what makes every kid love baseball for the rest of their life. And the final out baseball from the 1988 World Series was given by the catcher, Rick Dempsey, to the general manager, Fred Clare, who donated it to the Hall of Fame. And when I got this job, I had gotten to know Fred over the years in a number of different, he was very good to me as an intern, gave me great advice. And I stayed in touch with him over the years. And when I got this job, he was quoted in an article that said, I expect Josh to look after this artifact for the rest of the time. So every time I walk past the 88 last out ball, I kind of have to make sure, okay, Fred, it's still there and it's good. Don't worry. But the reality, I mean, it's just every day you can walk in a museum. I could work here for another 20 years and I still won't get to see all of it, understand all of it, take it. It's just, there's so much impressive stuff that trying to pick one thing is very, very hard.
Mine, Cade, by the way, since you've never asked me, and since I'm a sort of a business guy too, is the Honus Wagner T206 card. There's a place where we walk down the Hall of Fame and you can press a button that lights up. There's a bunch of different cards. That one every time I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised the Baseball Hall of Fame has one, but there's 10 known to mankind, or one just got found, Josh, which I'm sure you saw about.
There's very few that are at the highest level, but those are a holy grail section of baseball.
There's one that just got found that was in a family for over 100 years that just sold for $5 million plus. So there's one more, but that's my favorite one.
That's a good find.
I've never thought about it for myself. I'll have to think about what baseball moment I would most like to see an artifact from. I have to give some thought. That'll be my homework assignment. Shane, I'll be curious your answer down the road as well. Why don't we let Josh go? This has been spectacular. We kept you longer than we asked. Josh, thank you for graciously giving us that time. Keep up the great work. Eric, we'll see you this summer, I'm sure.
Thank you. I hope I get to see all of you guys, and truly, it's an honor to be on the show, and keep doing all the great work you're doing.
And thank you, as I want to say again, thank you for everything you do. The National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, because of the role that baseball plays in everything that we do in analytics and what it means to so many families, is just crucial. So thank you for that. You could be you could be the CEO of a lot of things, but
none would be as fun as this. I promise you.
Yeah, thank you for thank you again for everything you do.
It's our honor. Thank you.
Josh Rawitch, the president of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. That's the first half of Wharton Moneyball. Come back and join us after the break. Welcome back. Welcome back to Wharton Moneyball. Welcome back to the second half of this week's show. Second half, liberally speaking, we went overtime with the president of the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. That was, if it wasn't obvious, that was an Eric Bradlow choice. And I thoroughly enjoyed watching Eric a little bit googly-eyed. Every now and then we get googly-eyed about one of our guests. I was reminded, I have to be honest, I'm not the hugest Mac Brown fan in the world, but he did win the only national championship in my conscious life at the University of Texas. So when we had Mac Brown on a few years ago, I felt like I had to say some really nice things. I gushed a little bit. It's not great when the host is gushing. I gushed a little bit. And I was reminded of that as I watched Eric, because it means so much to you. That was awesome. And it was a spectacular interview, I thought.
I did too. I think I liked the way he framed it, which is, his job, besides the National Baseball Hall of Fame part, is to store the history of the game. And that's why when we talked about Bill James, or whether it's Theo Epstein or et cetera, Bill James deserves to be in the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, because he's an important part of the history of baseball. Whether he ever gets elected or has a plaque, I agree. I like the way he answered that as a totally separate issue. And I also thought of the way, in some sense, his job is to protect the game and protect the history of the game. So I like the way he said it, is like, we innovate, but, we innovate kind of slow. Like, we shouldn't be let's not bankrupt I don't even mean financially. Let's not ruin the Baseball Hall of Fame while we're trying to create some AI 3D something. Let's remember that, people come here because they want to think about Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb and George Sisler and Ken Griffey. And, let's never forget that. So I thought he was great. And, the fact that he came out of baseball teams, until I read the notes and I looked up about him, I didn't realize. I didn't know what his background was, but the fact that he actually worked in baseball on the business side makes sense. He's the CEO. He's not a statistician running he's the CEO of a 100-person organization that's entrusted with the history of baseball. Of course, he should be a business person and a fundraiser.
Shane, I'm going to put you on the spot. You have to have some moment from, especially those early Red Sox championships, that you would like to see the artifact from. I'm guessing that would be a peak artifact for you.
Yeah.
Bloody sock.
The bloody sock is I that one's soured a little bit on me, just because Kurt Schilling, kind of in his post baseball career, has been as laudable. It's got to be like a Big Papi home run. I think it would be the home run ball for that one that was hit in the Red Sox bullpen. The one in 2013, he hit a grand slam to come back against the Detroit Tigers. It's one of, I think, a couple grand slams in that particular postseason.
I thought you were going to refer to one of his games against the Yankees in the series when they were down 3-0.
That's what I thought too. That's what I thought too.
That's right alongside maybe Johnny Damon's first home run from 2004, Game 7 home run. I'd like to, that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, that's
maybe the gloves that A-Rod used to try and slap the ball out of Bronson Arroyo's glove in Game 6. The hamburger helper glove. I don't even remember
that. Legal play, totally legal.
Oh yeah, honestly, it's a minor miracle the umpires got it right, but they did.
Okay, my answer for now, I reserve the right to change it, is Ozzie Smith's glove. I want to see Ozzie Smith's glove. I'll take a glove over a bat or a ball, because the glove is such an intimate thing. I don't know if you've ever
talked about this, but I hate to say it, but my favorite part of the weekend obviously is being with my family and kids. But before, you understand, when the ceremony starts, this is the beauty of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Let's say there's usually 60, 70 returning Hall of Famers. They have a 2-minute video of each one. So you're sitting there for about 30 minutes to an hour where they announce Ozzie Smith, and then they show a clip of Ozzie Smith on this big screen, and Ozzie walks out. And so my kids and I say, they always joke with me, Dad, we can go now. Like, I hate to say it, but look, not that I don't want to hear Carlos Beltran's speech or Jeff Kent's speech and Andrew Jones' speech, but the first hour of it, when they're announcing all the Hall of Famers and they have the video up there, like, that to me that's the highlight of the Hall of Fame experience and weekend.
Hey man, I think the fielders, the guy who do great things in the field, probably have better highlights than the hitters, right?
Well, they announce like every living Hall of Fame, every Hall of Fame that's
ones
there?
That are there. The ones that are
there.
So literally, oh, by the way, maybe you don't know, they literally come out one at a time. Like, now, from the class of 1991, The Wizard of Oz. And then they put his thing up on the screen and you're all watching his highlight reel. Then they go, and now the Iron Man, Cal Ripken played it great.
We would increase participation at our alumni reunions if we had little videos of everybody who agreed to come to their reunions. Okay, fellas, let's talk a little bit of sports around the world. Before we do that, I want to ask explicitly about the Olympics. The Olympics wrapped up this weekend. I've been curious as I watched the Olympics off and on over the last 2 weeks. I was curious, like, what reactions y'all were having. Are there any sports that went up in your eyes, down in your eyes, found yourself liking more than you expected, less than you expected? Just a few quick comments that you learned, enjoyed, didn't enjoy.
You want me to go first, Shane?
Go for it.
Yeah, I just have a couple. So, obviously, I was really, really rooting for the U.S. versus Canada. Not that I have a real, I just know I remember when 1980, the Miracle on Ice happened. It's been obviously 46 years since the U.S. team won. Since I don't watch as much hockey as Shane or lots of other people, I wasn't aware of like how much, I'll call it variance, this 3-on-3 format is. Like, the gold medal is coming down to a 3-on-3. I mean, And
It's
Canada
ridiculous.
should have
It's
scored
absolutely
on the
ridiculous.
previous thing. And
It
to
is
me,
absolutely ridiculous they use that
no, I agree.
weird format for the gold medal game. I mean, the other game's fine. Whatever.
No. I'm just saying, one missed shot, one steal of the puck led to the U.S. ending up with an uncontested shot on goal. And I just thought that was a weird ending. But even then, I thought that was interesting. And look, despite I've been highly critical of her throughout for her 8 consecutive non-medals, I've never been rooting harder than I was rooting for Michaela Schifrin on that last run in the slalom. She was clearly so far ahead. I'm like, please don't hit a gate. Please don't hit a gate. Because like, if you just ski down here at Eric Bradlow speed now for the back half of this run, you're going to win the gold medal. And so to me, I've always found, in this case it was slalom, but the alpine skiing events and hockey, both women's and men's, to me, were just incredible experiences. So those will be my memories from this Olympics, those 2 events, both women and men's downhill and the women's and men's ice hockey.
I want to talk a little bit about that 3-on-3. I want to follow up on yours before I get to mine, because I do kind of feel like it got me thinking that, because the 3-on-3 format obviously is optimized towards just getting it over with as quickly as possible. Like, it's like, I guess I'm kind of, it made me wonder what actually the scoring rates are for 3-on-3 versus 4-on-4 versus 5-on-5. And, for either during the Olympics or during regular season NHL, we don't just do overtime after overtime, which is the real way to decide a hockey game, because it takes too long, the players get too tired, blah, blah, blah. No argument for the gold medal game again. Why they couldn't just play that one until there was a real winner, whatever. But it makes me wonder, like, 3-on-3 seems a little bit too fast, or like too dissimilar to real hockey, too high of a rate of scoring. If we just did overtime 4-on-4, it would be closer to real hockey, but maybe would have a scoring rate high enough where we could get I guess I've been inspired to be like, 3-on-3 is too extreme, but if we just did 4-on-4 for overtime in actual regular season hockey, could we avoid the shootout? Like, what's the expected waiting time? And is it reasonable enough that if we just did a faster pace, or I would even say go 3-on-3 for overtime in the regular season, because that's at least slightly more similar to real hockey than the shootout is. So, given that we can basically, I think, arbitrarily up the scoring rate in hockey just by removing players, why don't we have that as an overtime solution as opposed to shootout? I guess is my question.
No,
for the sport.
You could also, Shane, if you wanted to, let's say you said, we really don't want more than 15 minutes of overtime hockey. Let's start at 5-on-5 for the first 5 minutes, then go down to 4-on-4. No. I'm actually being serious. Yeah. You could just start reducing the number of players. Look, you saw the same thing I did, which is obviously, I mean, you're Canadian, you're rooting for Canada, I assume. I'm American, but it's not about that. By the end of the game, in my view, the U.S. was outplayed, and therefore they had a better shot at winning 3-on-3.
Yeah, it's a higher variance.
So you might as well. No. But I think they were playing for 3-on-3 at the end of the game. Obviously, they wanted to score. No, I'm just saying, the 40-something shots the Canadian team put up to the 20-something shots the U.S. team put up. And I understand we hit one off the post too, but I mean, they had the better opportunities in the game. The U.S. should have been playing for 3-on-3 overtime. That was their best chance to win the gold medal.
All right, Shane, give us some non-hockey Olympic thoughts.
Well, the other thing, I watched a ton of curling. Oh my goodness, it was so fun. I love curling so much. It's such a great sport. And there's a new kind of thing, at least new to me. My apologies to the real curling aficionados that are, I'm sure, the majority of our listeners. But this mixed doubles curling is like a new. So previously in Olympic curling, you had the men's team and the women's team, and it's 4 people per team, and they shoot 2 rocks each rock. This mixed doubles, it's only 2. It's a couple. So 2 people per team, and they don't shoot like as many rocks, but there's actually rocks placed on the. So in regular curling, all the rocks that like are thrown are the ones in the house. This one, there's actually rocks placed in the house ahead of time. So you start out with rocks in the house, and then they start throwing rocks. So it's almost like, it leads to like a lot more kind of interesting sort of scenarios, basically.
Shane, with only 2 people on the team, is there just one sweeper?
Yes. Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they're alternating sweeping and throwing. Huh. I missed that. That does sound
Yeah,
interesting.
no, it's
Yeah.
it's super interesting, and I think again, I mean, Adi was kind of telling me about there's already because there's also like a power play. There's all kinds of strategic elements I think they've introduced into already a very strategic and interesting game of curling with this mixed doubles format. So I'm
Okay.
eager to kind of check that out in other sort of situations. Anybody who is following curling is probably like, oh, this is old news, but for me, it was new, and I love this new format, to be honest.
Shane, if we had a tournament where half the teams were men's national teams and half the teams were women's national teams, what would the betting market say about the likely sex of the winning team?
Oh, that's such a good, interesting.
Are you asking, Cade, if men have any competitive real advantage in curling?
Well, I mean, one thing we can do, I mean, I don't know the answer to this, but like you could, within the mixed doubles tournament, you could certainly look at the shooting percentage, like kind of
Right.
like a success
Yeah.
rate of the men and women. I will say that
But
when
hold
I
on,
was watching,
hold on, Shane, if the evidence came back that the men had worse shooting percentage, they would blame the female sweepers. So it's not pure, it's not clean.
I mean, they'd find a way to complain no matter what, I suppose. But yeah, no, I will say in the mixed doubles gold medal was won by Sweden. And the woman person in the mixed Swedish team was like the Terminator. I don't think she missed a shot. She nailed absolutely everything. So at least the Swedish gold medal team was carried, in my opinion, by the women.
The null has to be that there's no advantage, right? The null has to be.
Is it possible?
Kind of
I'm just making this up since I don't know curling very well. Is it possible that men can sweep harder than women?
Yes,
and
yes, they can.
They can adjust the puck, the disc more so than women can.
It has to be.
Yes, that is in fact the case. In fact, they were talking about some 6'5", like the Italian men's team had this like 6'6", like uber athlete on it, and he was just like, and they actually like there's literal shots where they're like only he could have swept it where it needed to be, basically. So there is something to that.
Don't they do you did a Zamboni between rounds to come out and reglaze the ice? That beast is not.
I don't know how deep you want to go with this, but actually I've learned also through this Olympics that the ice is different for curling versus hockey. Like hockey ice made via Zamboni is too smooth. It doesn't like.
I was going to say it was too slick.
You can't curl a rock with that. They actually designed the ice in curling to kind of be pebbled. I think was the terminology they're using. And the anyway, so yes, I mean obviously deep dive, but yeah, it turns out a Zamboni would give you very bad ice for curling specifically.
Okay. My observations are I was with my in-laws and we were working in the north indoors fireplaces and we had the TV on all the time and you just kind of saw what was going on. Yeah. There were endless amounts of bobsled runs. There was endless curling. There was endless ski jumping and all of these things I found a little bit.
Half pipe, people on snowboards.
Half pipe for a long time. But Eric, I never enjoyed the half pipe so much. Anytime I saw these people jumping this time, this was what surprised me. I was transfixed, at least for the moment, watching these guys jump. And then it peaked for me when they got to the aerials. Watching these aerials you don't see it anywhere else in the world, anything remotely like it. It's just utterly dumbfounding to me that those people can do those things. But the other thing that jumps out to me is you need enough variation for it to be interesting. Like one of the reasons figure skating is kind of interesting, regardless of your taste for figure skating, is that there's real drama during those 2 minutes of those formats. Like some people fall, some people don't. You can observe that as a non-skating aficionado. And so there's separation, there's variation, even among the elite. In bobsled, there's like 4 100ths of a difference. It's like, come on. But anyway, so there's some amount of variation that's needed for optimal viewing. Okay, good fun. Let's do a real quick what caught your eye, just to close it on a traditional process. One thing, guys, and let's try to be as concise as possible since we're so over time, but one thing caught your eye in the world of sports.
I'll just be 10 seconds. The run is over. Scotty Scheffler only ended up 11th. But I will say the following. This is now, it's not a big thing. It's the 4th tournament in a row where he's had a bad first round, which has prevented him. Like if you just look at the last 3 rounds, he's won the last 4 tournaments. Problem is they play 4 rounds, not 3. So that's just interesting to me. But the guy like Tiger never gives up. The guy made the cut, Cade, on the cut line.
Yeah.
And ended up, so he was 70th. And he ended up 11th because he shot, I think it was 65 and 64 on the weekend. He's never out of it, ever out of it. And he's got, and it didn't even look like, it's not, the thing that's amazing about him, it reminded me about Tiger, maybe even better than Tiger in this one respect. Like, he's not going to rush it. He knows it's coming. And he knows that if he just stays in there, he can make 4 or 5 birdies in a row and he doesn't have to force it. So that's what caught my eye. The streak is over. I think it was the longest streak ever of top 10 finishes. And he, God forbid, he ended up 11th.
Eric, it's funny you mentioned that. I almost texted y'all on Sunday afternoon. I knew that he had barely made I knew he had been last in the whole tournament.
He had to make an 8-footer on the 18th to make the cut.
Okay. But then on Sunday, at one point, after he had finished, he was tied in the top 10. There were a bunch of folks. And
One guy made a birdie. One guy made a birdie with 2 holes to go that knocked him down to the 11th place.
So that was the drama that I was feeling when I looked at the scoreboard. I almost texted John, like, coming down to the last few holes, will his streak maintain? And I saw somebody jumped him. All right, Shane, what do you got?
Well, coming back from the Olympics, let's catch back up with the NHL and hockey. One thing I'm kind of interested to look at over the next couple months, it was lost in all the Olympic excitement, but the Carolina Hurricanes have this new goaltender, Brandon Bussey, who's like basically since joining the Hurricanes, and they got him off waivers. This was a goalie signed off waivers. He's 23-3-1 as a goaltender for the Hurricanes. 23-3-1. And I'll just say that is I mean, that's an NHL record. So he won 18 of his first 22 games, which is an NHL record.
Okay, hold on. These are weird ways to speak. It's like saying quarterbacks win 1-loss records. You know, it's even more extreme than saying a quarterback.
No, that's right. A goal, but this is a goal. You know, again, we're not necessarily attributing it all to him, but it is still unusual that a goaltender will have in his first, 27 games played, 23 victories. For example, just historically, the career leader in win percentage, and this is conditioning on 300 wins at least or whatever, is Patrick Waugh at 56%.
Yeah.
The current active leader in win percentage, other than this guy, Brandon Bussey, is Vasilevsky, and he's at 61%.
Okay. What about peripherals, though? Don't want to know peripherals, save percentages, and expected goals saved.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. And to a certain extent, he is standing out, but not standing out quite as much in those. But I think, I'm keeping an eye on this guy because there is inevitably, as you're hinting, going to be some regression to the mean. He can't keep going at a 90% win clip. But it's pretty unusual for anybody to come out of nowhere, essentially, to do this in hockey. And so let's keep an eye on him and what happens with the Carolina Hurricanes over the next couple months. Anytime
they come up, I'm reminded that whenever you talk to folks, the few people in the league that we have relationships with run analytically oriented. They run kind of sharp, and they all revere the Hurricanes organization. And so for them, they must have seen something. It says something about a player when the Hurricanes choose him off a waiver wire. All right, I'm going to go with baseball, guys. I picked this up. I regret not knowing who I got this from on Twitter, but now I'm just looking at Fangraphs. They cited Fangraphs and pointed out that preseason win probabilities in Major League Baseball. So this is me bringing baseball to you guys. Mm-hmm. Fangraphs preseason win probabilities. There are 12 teams at 1% or lower, and there's another 7 teams at below 2%, above 1, but below 2.
This is for probabilities of winning the World Series?
Probably winning the World
So
Series.
more than half the teams.
19 out of 30. 19 out of 30 have 2% or less. 19 out of 30. That seems problematic to me. By the way, it's skewed at the top, too.
Does it seem problematic to you for the health of the league or for your estimate, the accuracy of those probabilities?
Well, I tend to trust Fangraphs, but of course, nobody's perfect. I did have that thought, Shane, like, are these too low? I mean, the Guardians are in there. Some good organizations are down in there. They seem too
ridiculous.
Low, but it connects to, we're coming up on the next CBA, and we're coming up on a lockout, we're coming on a lockout. The owners are going to lock them out after this next season. And it's all going to be about a salary cap. And the players resist this because the top end players do so well, but it doesn't seem healthy to me. I mean, I generally favor players, by the way, when it comes to these negotiations, but it doesn't seem healthy to me, the organization, to the league, to have that kind of disparity at the start of the season. Like your whole fan base, more than half of the fans are looking at a 1.5% chance of winning the whole thing. Really?
Yeah, I mean, again, I that's a problem with that's a problem of a salary floor, not a salary cap. There are a lot of
They go together.
teams in baseball that are not trying to compete.
Okay.
Right.
And I could name them. They would correspond to those ones with 1%, 2%. There are some teams that are small market and actually trying to compete.
Milwaukee had the best record or whatever last year. I get it, but but look, we know how probabilities work.
Yeah.
And they all get stacked. They get stacked.
No, it's and I do think that there's a problem. I mean, at the top, you can look at baseball and actually argue it's one of the highest parity leagues in the sense that at the top, like if you look at kind of World Series winners or like playoff teams over the last couple decades, it's actually almost all the league is represented.
I just want to address Cade's point just for 1 second. Obviously, I know it was 19 out of 30. Let's just imagine it was 15 out of 30, just for simplicity. That's half, right? Obviously, the bottom half of the teams have lower than half the win probability by definition, right? And so the question is, what would be a number you would feel comfortable with? Because right now, if they're in the 1% or less than 1% range, my guess is Fangraphs has that at 20 or 25% total for the bottom 15 teams. That doesn't seem that bad to me in terms of a total prediction. Like, in other words, if I had to bet you, I'll take the top half, Cade, you get the bottom half, and I got to give you 3-1 odds. You might even say that's not enough. You might even say I got to give you 5-1 odds, 6-1 odds. So I'm not sure 20%, 25% probability for the bottom 15 teams, which is only an average of about 1.5% per team. I'm not sure that's too low. As a matter of fact,
but it doesn't speak the most directly to unhealthiness. It's really about the year to year. If it's the same teams,
that's different.
Year to year that have no chance because they're not even trying.
I would not disagree with you. I would just
hold on. As long as you're going to use an example, let's use the actual numbers, because you can't take the 15th team is 1.5%, and so the average of the bottom 15 is more like 0.8, 0.9.
Okay,
so we're talking about
1%. Then let's say the average is 1%.
So 15%.
So I got to give you 5 or 6-1 odds. Yeah. That seems pretty well calibrated to me. And by the way,
it's not a question of calibration. So it's a good question. You're raising a decent point, but that's not the point I'm raising. And, but Shane's, I would address Shane, and to some extent what you're saying, Eric, by pointing to other leagues. And I don't have answers to this, but what do you think that number is? Here's what I'd turn back to you, Eric. What do you think that number is at the start? If there were, let's pick any organization that represents Fangraphs for NFL football. What do you think the bottom 16 teams get in NFL on the average season?
I'm going to say I'm going to stick with my first guess, somewhere between 25 and 30%.
Yeah, my first guess was 30, but third. My first guess was 2% each, which I have no idea.
What are the chances that a bottom half team in the NBA wins the championship? 0?
Yeah, these are the questions I would ask.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I would say the NBA, the NBA to get to that 15%. How many teams would you have to include? I think it's got to be for the bottom half of teams in the NBA. It's got to be more like 5% or something like that. I don't know. Actually, I mean, again, people who do real predictions, right?
Okay. Well, that's all fair.
That's
yeah. So
that's the question. That's the question. That is. By the way, what do you think the Dodgers are on the same analysis?
Oh,
I've seen most stats. I mean, they're probably too high, but I don't know, like 20% or something like that.
That's what I was going to guess, somewhere around 20%.
27. What do you think the second highest is? It's the Braves. What do you think the second highest is?
Less than half that. Should
9, 1/3 that. 27 and 1/3 that. 27 and 1/3. So more disparate.
People don't know. And that's the part that I don't think is well calibrated. I do not think any of these prediction models are able to handle this kind of tail team on paper, the Dodgers, because I think the Pacoda predictions had them predicted to be like 105 wins or something like that, which is also insane. I think. I think our prediction models are, I think, miscalibrated for a team like the Dodgers, where it's kind of, on paper, you think they should dominate everybody and you forget what baseball's actually like.
Well, so just for what it's worth, the wins from Fangraphs that are driving these numbers are 99.4. So it's not as extreme as you might think, though I know 99 is still a high number for projected wins. So that's a very high.
If you gave 100, I mean, we scoff usually at 100 wins at the start of the season as a prediction.
This is 0.6 below that.
Well, right,
okay.
right.
Why don't we wrap it there, fellas? This has been another full hour, a little bit more than a full hour of Sports Analytics here on Wharton Moneyball for the whole team. Adi Wyner in absentia, the three guys who have been in here for this show, me for most of it, Eric for the whole thing, Shane for the whole thing. Thank you guys for listening. Big shout out. Deion Simpkins makes this whole thing go round. Marissa Reyna, our producer, and Dee Patel, the boss lady. Aaron Tran running some valuable support. Aaron Tran jumped in here at the break and dropped some knowledge on us. Thanks to the whole team. Thank you guys for listening. Come back and join us next time. Between now and then, enjoy your sports.